I'm Audrey Mitchell, 34, and I've spent 8 Christmases watching my family celebrate without me. Last December, as I scrolled through Instagram they were my parents, siblings, cousins, even my aunt's new boyfriend, all gathered around the tree in matching pajamas. No invitation, not even a text. That night, as tears dried on my face, I made a decision that would change everything. No more waiting for invitations that would never come. This Christmas would be different, and I had exactly 9 months to make it unforgettable. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button if you've ever felt excluded by family, and subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now let's talk about what happens when you stop begging for a seat at the table and build your own mountain retreat instead. Growing up, the Mitchell family Christmas was everything holiday movies promised. Our house in Denver was always the gathering place. Mom's cinnamon rolls on Christmas morning. Dad's elaborate light displays my sister Stephanie and brother Ryan fighting over who would place the star on the tree. I was the middle child, the peacemaker, the one who helped Mom in the kitchen while memorizing every family tradition. Audrey always remembers the details, my mother Linda would say, patting my head. She'll keep our traditions alive. That's what made the first exclusion so shocking. I was 26, had just landed my job at a promising tech startup in Seattle. The position required a December 20th start date, but I'd negotiated to begin on December 26th, instead specifically to maintain our family Christmas tradition. Don't worry about rushing back, Mom had said during our November call. We know how important this opportunity is. I interpreted that as them being understanding about my late arrival on Christmas Eve rather than my complete absence. I spent December 23rd flying home exhausted but excited, carrying carefully selected gifts. When my Uber pulled up to the darkened house, confusion set in. Had they gone to a restaurant, I let myself in with my key, finding the place cold and empty of decorations. Calling my mother yielded a surprised response. "Oh, Audrey, we're at Stephanie's this year. We thought you were too busy with your new job." Stephanie lived just 20 minutes away. She had never mentioned hosting when we'd texted the previous week. "We're just finishing dinner," my mother added, her voice oddly tight. "But you're welcome to come by for dessert." I arrived to find everyone in full Christmas mode, decorations up, gifts, already exchanged photo albums out. The awkward pause when I entered made it clear I was an afterthought, a disruption to their established celebration. "We sent you an email about the change," Dad claimed, avoiding eye contact. No such email existed in any folder of my inbox. The pattern repeated the following year. This time, the gathering had moved to my brother Ryan's new house in Boulder. "We thought you'd want to spend it with your Seattle friends," was the excuse. By year 3, I confronted them directly during a summer visit. "I need to know if I'm still welcome at Christmas," I said during a family dinner. "Don't be dramatic," Stephanie rolled her eyes. "Of course you're welcome. We just never know if you're coming since you moved away." "I always come," I insisted. "I've never missed a Christmas until you stopped including me." "See, this is why we sometimes need space," my mother interjected. "You've become so confrontational since taking that corporate job." My father, perpetually conflict avoidant, studied his mashed potatoes with intense interest. The 4th year, I didn't wait for an invitation. I simply booked my flight and told them my arrival time. My mother sounded flustered. "Oh, we're actually going to your cousin Jillian's cabin this year. Space is very limited." I thought I mentioned it. She hadn't. "I can stay at a hotel nearby," I offered. "The cabin's really in the middle of nowhere," Ryan jumped in, having apparently been listening on speakerphone. "No hotels for miles." Later that month, I discovered through Facebook photos that middle of nowhere meant Breckenridge, one of Colorado's most popular tourist destinations filled with accommodation options. The pattern continued year after year. Sometimes I was told about plans too late to make arrangements. Other times, plans changed suddenly after I'd booked non-refundable flights. One particularly painful year, I showed up unannounced on Christmas Eve, only to find my family had left that morning for a spontaneous cruise. The careful coordination required for such spontaneity was obvious, but no one acknowledged it. Through conversations with extended family, I discovered another layer of deception. Cousins, aunts, and uncles were told I couldn't make it or had other plans. My absence was explained away as my choice, my prioritization of career over family. Your mother says you're just so busy with your important job, my cousin Jillian once commented, not hiding her judgment. Some of us still make family a priority. The criticism of my career became another pattern. My role as a product executive at a technology company was dismissed as playing with computers by my sister Stephanie, despite it funding her destination wedding when her husband Greg temporarily lost his job. My brother Ryan, once my closest ally, began referring to me as Miss Corporate after he settled into a teaching career. Only my Aunt Beatrice, my mother's sister, saw through the facade. "They're intimidated by your success," she told me during a private lunch. "Linda always expected you to follow Stephanie's path, marry early, stay close, need her constantly. Your independence threatens her control." Aunt Beatrice became my only honest family connection, the sole person who validated what I was experiencing rather than gaslighting me into believing I was imagining the exclusion. Last Christmas was the breaking point. Not only was I excluded again, but the Instagram photos revealed they had invited neighbors, distant relatives, even new acquaintances to fill the house, everyone but me. The matching pajamas, monogrammed stockings, and coordinated table settings spoke of months of planning. 8 years of forgetting to include me was no accident. It was a carefully orchestrated removal of my place in the family. To understand why my family systematically pushed me out, you need to understand the Mitchell family power structure. My mother Linda has always been the undisputed matriarch, orchestrating our lives like a conductor, precise, demanding, and intolerant of anyone who doesn't follow her score. My sister Stephanie, 2 years older, earned her position as favorite by perfect compliance. She married her high school sweetheart, Greg, at 22, bought a house 4 blocks from our parents, and produced 3 grandchildren on schedule. Every decision, from her children's names to her living room furniture, was filtered through our mother's approval. "I just don't understand why you need to live so far away," Mom would tell me, repeatedly. Stephanie manages a career while staying close. The fact that Stephanie's part-time accounting job at my father's friend's company was arranged by my parents and accommodated her schedule completely went unmentioned. My younger brother Ryan was the family golden boy, until he married Megan, whom my mother initially disliked. Ryan's strategy became overcompensation. He and Megan bought a house even closer to our parents than Stephanie's. Their children were enrolled in the same activities my mother had chosen for us, and they called her daily for advice they didn't need. The most painful transformation was Ryan's. As children, we were inseparable allies, navigating our mother's moods and Stephanie's princess status. The summer before I left for college, Ryan and I had stayed up all night on the roof, promising to always protect each other from family politics. "You and me against the world odds," he'd said, using his childhood nickname for me. By his wedding 7 years later, something had shifted. Megan viewed me as competition for Ryan's attention and made her feelings clear during wedding planning. "Ryan says you're too busy to help with centerpieces anyway," she'd say, despite my offers of assistance. "We know Seattle is more important than family stuff." Ryan never corrected these mischaracterizations. Instead, he began echoing them. The defining betrayal came when I was 29. My parents faced an unexpected tax bill after my father Harold's small construction business suffered during an economic downturn. They needed $30,000 to avoid a lien on their house. As the only family member with substantial savings, I immediately transferred the money, asking only for a simple promissory note detailing repayment terms. "We're family," my father had protested. "We don't need paperwork." But I insisted, having learned from smaller, unpaid loans in the past. They reluctantly signed, agreeing to modest monthly payments. 2 months later, my mother called excitedly about a family trip to Hawaii they were planning for Christmas, all expenses paid for Stephanie, Greg, their children, Ryan, Megan, and their son. "That sounds wonderful," I said, waiting for my invitation. "We thought you wouldn't want to take time off work," she responded. And you've probably been to Hawaii for business anyway. I hadn't. Later, I discovered they had used my loan to fund this family vacation, a vacation from which I was deliberately excluded. My cousin Jillian, always eager to curry favor with my mother, became an active participant in my isolation. At family gatherings I did attend, she would loudly reference events I'd missed. Remember last Christmas when we all went sledding, she'd begin fully aware I hadn't been invited. It was the best day ever. The most hurtful discovery came through Aunt Beatrice last summer. She accidentally revealed the existence of a family group chat titled Mitchell Memories, a chat with every family member except me. Screenshots she later shared showed years of holiday planning, family news, and even discussions about my personal life, including speculation about why I remained unmarried. She's probably too picky, my mother had written. Always thinks she's too good for regular men. Or maybe it's because she's never around, Stephanie had added, followed by an eye-rolling emoji. These messages explained so much: how everyone always seemed coordinated in their stories, how plans were so thoroughly arranged without my knowledge, how family members sometimes slipped and referenced conversations I hadn't been part of. The group chat represented my complete excision from family communication, while maintaining the fiction that I was simply too busy to participate in family life. The truth was painfully clear: I wasn't forgotten. I was unwanted, a threat to the carefully maintained family hierarchy that required everyone to orbit around my mother's son with Stephanie as her chosen successor. My success, independence, and unwillingness to pretend my mother's judgments were always right made me dangerous. Rather than confront this directly, they simply erased me from family traditions while pretending I had chosen my absence. For years, I tried to balance my need for family connection with self-protection. I attended Easter gatherings and summer barbecues when invited, maintained polite phone conversations, sent thoughtful birthday gifts. I kept hoping that maintaining these connections would eventually reopen the door to full family inclusion. But watching those Christmas Instagram photos last year, seeing them all wearing matching sweaters that had clearly been ordered weeks in advance, no extra sweater ordered for me, something finally broke. The message was undeniable: I wasn't missing Christmas by accident. I was being deliberately excluded from the most significant family tradition while being gaslighted into believing it was somehow my fault. That night, staring at those photos, I made my decision. No more begging for inclusion. No more pretending. If they wanted to erase me from family Christmas, I would create something so undeniable they couldn't pretend it didn't exist. January arrived with a coldness that matched my resolve. After another holiday season spent alone in my Seattle apartment, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Adams, the therapist I'd been seeing intermittently since moving west. I'm done, I told her, my voice steadier than I expected. 8 years of exclusion is enough data. Dr. Adams, who had witnessed my cycle of hope and disappointment for years, nodded slowly. What does done look like for you, Audrey? That question launched 2 months of intensive therapy. Dr. Adams helped me identify the patterns of emotional manipulation, the gaslighting that made me question my own perceptions, and my family's coordinated efforts to make me feel responsible for my exclusion. Your family operates on conditional love, she explained. Your role was to remain emotionally dependent and geographically close. When you broke that pattern with your independence, they began punishing you, not consciously perhaps, but systematically. During these sessions, I also examined my financial position. At 34, I had advanced to director of product at my company. Years of stock options in a successful tech firm, careful investing, and minimal debt had created substantial savings. I lived comfortably but modestly in Seattle, my major expenses being travel and occasional indulgences. What would you do for Christmas if resources weren't a consideration? Dr. Adams asked during a February session. Create something so beautiful they couldn't ignore it, I answered immediately. Something that shows I don't need their invitation to celebrate. That evening, I began searching real estate listings. Initially, I browsed Seattle properties thinking of hosting friends. Then, almost on impulse, I expanded my search to Colorado's mountain communities. The first listing that caught my attention was in Aspen, A modern mountain house with panoramic views, just 3 hours from my family's Denver suburb. At $2.1 million, it was a significant investment, but within my means after selling some company stock, the symbolism wasn't lost on me positioning myself literally above the family dynamics that had diminished me for years. In March, I flew to Colorado and drove to Aspen with a realtor named Patricia. The property exceeded the listing photos: 4 bedrooms, floor to ceiling, windows framing snow-capped mountains, a stone fireplace that anchored the great room, and a professional kitchen any chef would envy. There are 3 other offers already, Patricia warned as I stood on the deck watching late winter snow dust the pines, all within 24 hours of listing. I submitted an offer that evening slightly above asking price with minimal contingencies. After a tense bidding war with a celebrity's manager, the house became mine in early April. The closing process was surreal. I signed documents, remotely wired the down payment, and suddenly owned a mountain house I'd visited exactly once. The rational part of my brain questioned this impulsive purchase, but something deeper knew this was the right decision, not just an investment, but a reclamation of power. 2 weeks after closing, I returned to see my property. April in the mountains meant melting snow and emerging wildflowers. The house felt different, not just a symbol now, but a responsibility, a blank canvas. Walking through empty rooms, I imagined Christmas lights reflecting in the windows, a towering tree beside the fireplace, the dining table extended to accommodate guests who actually wanted to be there. Quite a view, isn't it? The voice startled me. A man stood at the edge of my property, a golden retriever at his side. "I'm Mason," he introduced himself, keeping a respectful distance. "Your neighbor to the right. Just wanted to welcome you to the mountain." Mason turned out to be a retired architect who'd built his own house 5 years earlier. He offered practical advice about mountain living, which snowplow service was reliable, which trees needed trimming before winter, how to prevent pipes from freezing during cold snaps. "Not many people buy mountain property in spring," he observed as we walked the boundary of my land. "Most wait until summer." "I'm planning for Christmas," I explained, surprising myself with my candor. Mason didn't press for details, but his understanding nod suggested he recognized determination when he saw it. Before leaving, he wrote his phone number on a business card. "Mountain houses always need something fixed. Call if you need recommendations or just a cup of sugar." That night, sitting alone on my empty deck, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, I felt something shift inside me. For years, I'd positioned myself as the excluded one, the victim of my family's rejection. Sitting on my deck of my house, I felt myself rising above that narrative, literally and figuratively. This house wasn't about revenge. It was about creating something of my own, something authentic that reflected my values rather than my family's judgment. The mountain beneath me felt solid, unwavering, much like the certainty growing in my heart. May arrived with a renovation timeline that bordered on impossible. To transform the mountain house into a Christmas showpiece by December required immediate action. My first call was to Charlotte Winters, an interior designer whose work I'd admired in a Seattle restaurant. 9 months for a complete renovation, Charlotte questioned when I explained my timeline. "That's ambitious, especially for a mountain property. Contractors can be scarce, and weather complicates everything." "Money isn't an issue," I told her. "Time is." Charlotte arrived the following week, her critical eye assessing each space. "The bones are excellent," she conceded, "but everything needs updating: kitchen, bathrooms, flooring. And if we're creating a Christmas showcase, we need to consider lighting sightlines for a statement tree flow for entertaining." We spent 3 days developing plans. The great room would be reconfigured to create a natural place for a 12-foot Christmas tree, visible from both inside and outside through the windows. The kitchen would be gutted and rebuilt with dual ovens, an expanded island for cookie decorating, and a butler's pantry for caterer staging. "People really go all out for Christmas in these mountains," Charlotte noted as we finalized plans. "There's even a home tour in December. The right house can get featured in regional magazines." The idea of my Christmas house potentially reaching my family through a magazine spread added a satisfying layer to my plan. By June, construction was underway, but not without complications. The first setback came when contractors discovered water damage beneath the primary bathroom. Previous owners did a cosmetic repair without addressing the actual leak, the contractor explained, showing me rotted subfloor and joists. We need to rebuild this section properly. The repair added 2 weeks and $20,000 to the project. I approved it without hesitation. Most clients would negotiate or look for cheaper solutions, Charlotte remarked. I'm not interested in temporary fixes, I replied. This house needs to be perfect. As renovations progressed, I found myself making weekly trips from Seattle to Colorado, working remotely from a corner of the construction zone. Each decision, from countertop materials to light fixtures, felt significant beyond its practical function. The house was becoming an expression of everything I'd suppressed to fit my family's expectations. Instead of the traditional style my mother preferred, I chose contemporary mountain design with clean lines and natural elements, rather than the beige safety my father advocated. Neutral colors sell better, Audrey. I selected rich teals, warm cognacs, and dramatic charcoals. July brought progress, but also more challenges. A custom dining table I'd commissioned large enough to seat 16 was delayed when the artisan's workshop flooded. The specialty tiles for the kitchen backsplash arrived in the wrong color. 3 windows were measured incorrectly and needed reordering. Each setback tightened the timeline, but I remained resolute. I increased the budget again, authorized overtime for crews, and paid premiums for expedited deliveries. During this period, Charlotte moved from contractor to confidant. Over late dinners reviewing design details, I gradually shared the story behind my Christmas mission. So this is about showing your family what they're missing, she asked one evening. Initially, yes, I admitted. But it's becoming something more, reclaiming Christmas on my terms. Charlotte's understanding went beyond professional courtesy. Having navigated her own family estrangement years earlier, she recognized the complex emotions driving my project. Just be prepared for this not to fix everything with your family, she cautioned gently. Beautiful spaces can create opportunities for healing, but they can't force reconciliation. By August, with the house taking shape, I began planning Christmas details with almost obsessive precision. I researched top-tier caterers, commissioned custom wreaths from an artisan in Vail, and ordered hand-blown glass ornaments from a Vermont studio. Mason, my neighbor, became a regular visitor, offering mountain wisdom and sometimes just companionship as I sat on my partially finished deck. Unlike others who seemed perplexed by my Christmas in summer fixation, Mason never questioned it. Mountains understand waiting, he said once cryptically. They spend centuries becoming what they're meant to be. As the physical space transformed, doubts occasionally surfaced. Late one night, standing in the empty great room, I found myself questioning the entire project. What if I created this perfect Christmas and still ended up alone? What if my family rejected even this grand gesture? What if this expensive project was just another elaborate attempt to win approval I would never receive? I called Dr. Adams the next morning, scheduling an emergency session. You're afraid of another rejection, she observed after I voiced my fears. That's understandable. I've invested so much, not just money, but emotion, planning hope. Audrey, what if we reframe this project? She suggested. This isn't about creating something your family can't ignore. It's about creating something that fulfills you regardless of their response. That perspective shift proved crucial. In the weeks that followed, I made decisions based on what brought me joy rather than what might impress others. I chose decorations that resonated with my personal aesthetic, planned menus featuring my favorite foods, and created spaces designed for genuine connection rather than showcasing. One design element became particularly meaningful, a photo wall along the main staircase. Working with Charlotte, I designed a gallery of frames that would display my life journey. Significantly, the arrangement included obvious gaps, spaces where family photos would traditionally hang left conspicuously empty. Those spaces tell a story, Charlotte noted as we finalized the design. They do, I agreed. But they also leave room for new stories. September brought me back to Denver for my father's 60th birthday. The renovation was progressing well, and I had decided not to mention the mountain house to my family yet. The birthday dinner unfolded with familiar dynamics, my mother orchestrating Stephanie, performing the role of perfect daughter Ryan and Megan, competing for parental attention. I played my assigned part, the distant daughter, briefly reconnecting. After dinner, while everyone moved to the living room for cake, I used the bathroom near my father's home office. Returning, I noticed his computer open on the desk, email visible. I should have continued walking. Instead, drawn by a subject line reading Christmas Planning 2025, I paused. The email was from my mother to my father, Stephanie Ryan, and several extended family members. Dated August 15th, nearly 4 months before Christmas, it detailed plans for the upcoming holiday. Dinner assignments, gift exchange, rules, activity schedule, all meticulously arranged without any mention of me. Against my better judgment, I scrolled through the email thread. Aunt Carol had asked, "Should we include Audrey this year?" My mother's response, "Audrey prefers her Seattle Christmas traditions now. Let's not complicate things." My sister Stephanie had added, "Plus, remember last year when she showed up unexpectedly, so awkward. Better to just keep things as they are." No one, not even my father, had challenged these assertions. With shaking hands, I searched my father's email for my name. Dozens of exchanges appeared, many explicitly discussing my exclusion from family events. One particularly painful email from my mother to my father read, "Harold, please make sure you delete that Christmas invitation before sending it to the family group." We accidentally included Audrey's name again. Another from Stephanie complained, "Mom, Audrey just called asking about Thanksgiving plans." I stuck to our story about keeping it small this year, just making sure everyone's on the same page. The systematic nature of my exclusion, the coordination, the shared stories, the deliberate effort required was overwhelming. This wasn't neglect. It was methodical removal. In a daze, I returned to the living room, watching my family laugh and celebrate as if through glass. These people had actively conspired to push me out while maintaining the fiction that I had chosen to distance myself. I left early, claiming an early flight the next morning. No one questioned my excuse. Instead of returning to my hotel, I drove to Aunt Beatrice's house across town. Despite the late hour, she welcomed me in concern, evident at my ashen face. I found emails I managed collapsing onto her sofa. They've been planning it all along. Aunt Beatrice sat beside me, her hand covering mine. "I've suspected for years, but I hoped I was wrong. You knew. Not specifics, but I know my sister. Linda has always needed to control her narrative. When you moved away and built your own successful life, you challenged her story that her way is the only way to happiness. But why would Dad Ryan everyone go along with it? Your father avoids conflict at any cost. Ryan and Stephanie have built their lives around your parents' approval. They have too much invested to risk it." Aunt Beatrice made tea as I recounted the emails I'd discovered. "There's more," she admitted reluctantly. "Things I've overheard that I didn't want to burden you with." Over the next hour, Aunt Beatrice confirmed my worst suspicions and revealed new betrayals. My family had been borrowing money from me while mocking my career as just playing with computers. They discussed my personal life in group settings, speculating about my relationships, and attributing my single status to being cold and career-obsessed rather than selective and independent. Most shocking was learning that Stephanie had deliberately sabotaged my relationship with Tyler, my college boyfriend. When he'd called the house looking for me during a visit home, Stephanie had told him I was out with an old flame, knowing I was actually helping our grandmother. The misunderstanding had spiraled into our breakup. "Why would she do that?" I asked, bewildered. "You were happy," Aunt Beatrice said simply, "and independent. Two things Stephanie couldn't bear witnessing while feeling trapped in her own choices." Before leaving, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. Do they even love me anymore? Aunt Beatrice considered this carefully. "They love the idea of you, their daughter and sister who fits their narrative. They haven't learned to love the actual woman you've become." The following morning, I visited my parents' house one last time before my flight. My father was alone working in his garage workshop. "Dad," I began, "I need to ask you something important." He looked up from his project wariness crossing his features. "Why have I been excluded from Christmas for 8 years? His eyes darted away. "Audrey, nobody's excluding you. You know how your mother gets with her planning. Sometimes wires get crossed. For 8 consecutive years. That's not crossed wires. That's deliberate." His shoulders slumped slightly. "Your mother thinks it's best this way. You and she. You clash. It upsets her during the holidays. And you agree with this decision?" "I go along to keep the peace," he admitted, still not meeting my eyes. "It's easier for everyone." "Easier for everyone except me," I corrected. He had no response to that. On the flight back to Seattle, grief gave way to clarity. My family hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen to exclude me. The distinction was crucial and freeing. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. I was responding to a deliberate pattern of rejection. The Mountain House project took on new meaning. This wasn't about creating something my family couldn't ignore. This was about creating something for myself and the people who genuinely valued me. That evening, I sat on my partially completed deck, watching sunset paint the mountains gold. Mason found me there, sensing something had changed. "Rough trip home?" he asked, settling into the chair beside mine. Through unexpected tears, I shared the revelations from my father's computer. Mason listened without interruption or judgment, offering only his steady presence as comfort. "Family can be the deepest wound," he said finally. "But it doesn't have to be the defining one." Watching darkness claim the mountains, I felt strangely peaceful. The truth, however painful, had freed me from years of confusion and self-doubt. My family had made their choice long ago. Now I was making mine. October arrived with mountain aspens turning gold, and the renovation entering its final phase. The great room was complete vaulted ceiling, soaring above the stone fireplace windows, framing snow-dusted peaks, reclaimed wood beams crossing overhead. The kitchen gleamed with professional appliances and quartzite countertops. Bedrooms weighted with custom furnishings and luxurious linens. "We're ahead of schedule," Charlotte announced during her final walkthrough. "The house will be photo-ready by the end of the month." I had scheduled a professional photographer to document the completed project, partly for insurance purposes, partly for my personal records, but mostly for what would come next. Mason joined me for the photo shoot, offering suggestions about capturing the property's best angles. The October light cooperated magnificently, bathing each space in golden afternoon Sunday. "These look like magazine shots," Mason observed, reviewing images on the photographer's screen. "That's the idea," I replied. The photos exceeded my expectations. The house appeared both grand and intimate, luxurious yet welcoming. Mountain views framed through windows added natural drama, while interior details showcased meticulous design choices. With these images, my strategy advanced to the next phase. I began sharing them strategically on social media platforms, tagging the location but offering minimal explanation beyond my new mountain retreat. Christmas plans in progress. The response was immediate. College friends, former colleagues, and casual acquaintances expressed admiration and curiosity. Notifications accumulated as the photos circulated through wider networks. Within 3 days, family members began reaching out first, cousins, then aunts and uncles. Their messages carried thinly disguised interest. "Wow, Audrey. Didn't know you were looking at mountain property." "Gorgeous place," wrote cousin Jillian, who had participated actively in my Christmas exclusions. "That fireplace is stunning." "Perfect for family gatherings," commented my Uncle Mark, who had never questioned my absence from recent family events. I responded politely but non-committally to each message, neither inviting interest nor discouraging it. Meanwhile, I was working with a stationer in Aspen to create Christmas invitations that would make an impression. The design featured a letterpress rendering of the mountain house against a night sky with "Christmas at Audrey's Mountain House" in elegant script. Inside, details outlined a 3-day Christmas celebration, including Christmas Eve, dinner, Christmas morning, brunch, outdoor winter activities, and accommodations information for nearby luxury hotels. "These are spectacular," Charlotte commented, reviewing the proof. "Who's on your guest list?" I showed her the carefully curated list, close friends from Seattle colleagues I'd grown close to Aunt Beatrice, and select extended family members who had maintained genuine connections with me despite the family dynamics. Conspicuously absent were my parents, Stephanie and Ryan. "Are you sure about this?" Charlotte asked gently. "They excluded me for 8 years," I reminded her. "I'm just acknowledging the reality they created." The invitations were mailed in early November, first to non-family guests, then to selected extended family members. As anticipated, news traveled quickly through family circles. Within days, my mother called. "Audrey, darling," she began with forced casualness. "How are you? It's been too long since we've really caught up." After brief pleasantries, she arrived at her purpose. "I'm hearing rumors about some mountain house you've bought and a Christmas gathering." "It's not a rumor," I replied evenly. "I purchased a house in Aspen this spring and completed renovations last month." "A house in Aspen? My goodness, that must have been expensive," she remarked, disapproval thinly veiled. "I had no idea you were looking at property." "There's a lot you don't know about my life, Mom." An uncomfortable pause followed before she pressed forward. "Well, I hope this Christmas plan isn't going to conflict with family tradition. We're all gathering at our house this year." The irony was almost too perfect. "Don't worry," I assured her. "I wouldn't want to complicate your plans." As November progressed, the family's attempts to secure invitations intensified. My sister Stephanie called under the pretext of sharing her children's school news, eventually mentioning she'd heard about my little Christmas thing. "The kids would love to see a real mountain house," she hinted. "They miss their Aunt Audrey." "I miss them too," I said truthfully. "It's been difficult not being included in family gatherings." "What do you mean?" Stephanie feigned confusion. "You're always welcome. You just never seem interested in coming." Rather than arguing, I simply changed the subject. Ryan's approach came through Megan, who sent a text asking about investment opportunities near my mountain house. "We've been thinking about a vacation property ourselves," she claimed, despite their frequent complaints about being house poor. My brother followed up with a rare call, awkwardly attempting to rebuild our connection in the span of 15 minutes. "Remember how we used to watch Christmas movies together?" he reminisced. "We should do that again sometime. Maybe this year." I remember I said, letting the invitation hang unacknowledged. The most transparent attempt came from my mother, who appeared unannounced at my Seattle apartment during a shopping trip she'd never mentioned planning. "Surprise," she exclaimed when I opened the door as if spontaneous cross-country visits were our norm. Over coffee in my living room, she alternated between criticizing my decor. "It's just so modern, isn't it?" and dropping hints about Christmas. "I was thinking we could revive that tradition of you helping me with Christmas dinner," she suggested. "You always had a knack for the perfect table setting." "I've already made my Christmas plans," I reminded her. Her expression tightened momentarily before she recovered. "Surely you're not serious about spending Christmas away from family after all these years of scheduling difficulties?" The euphemism for their deliberate exclusion nearly made me laugh. "I'm completely serious," I assured her. "The invitations have been sent, responses received, menus planned, everything's arranged." "But we're your family," she insisted, real emotion finally breaking through her calculated approach. "Yes," I agreed. "And for 8 years you chose to celebrate without me." She left shortly afterward, visibly unsettled by my refusal to pretend the past hadn't happened. Meanwhile, the positive responses to my invitations accumulated. Friends booked flights, extended family members secured hotel rooms, and Aunt Beatrice called weekly with excitement. My Christmas gathering was taking shape without the people who had defined Christmas for me throughout my childhood. The strange irony wasn't lost on me. I had created this elaborate event to reclaim something my family had taken from me, only to discover that the family I'd longed to include no longer felt essential to its success. Thanksgiving arrived, another holiday I'd spent apart from my family in recent years. This time, rather than feeling excluded, I hosted a gathering of friends in Seattle, sharing a meal that blended traditions from various households. Photos from this celebration, posted on social media, triggered another round of family reactions. A group chat screenshot forwarded by Aunt Beatrice revealed their panic. "She's really doing her own thing for the holidays," Ryan had written. "This could become a permanent arrangement." "All because of a few missed invitations," my mother responded. "She's being ridiculous." "Maybe we should have included her more," my father suggested, showing the first sign of recognizing their role. "Cousin Jillian, ever loyal to my mother," had replied Aunt Linda. "Don't let her guilt you. She moved away and built her separate life. Now she wants to play the victim." Reading their exchanges, I felt strangely detached. Their version of events where my absence was my choice, rather than their orchestration, no longer had power to confuse me. The truth was documented in years of emails, text messages, and my own painful memories. As December approached, I finalized my guest list without immediate family members. The mountain house stood ready, Christmas decorations waiting to be installed upon my arrival. Professional caterers were booked, activities arranged, guest rooms prepared. For the first time in 8 years, I anticipated Christmas with genuine excitement rather than dread. Whatever happened with my family, I had reclaimed this celebration as my own. December arrived with a fresh blanket of snow across the mountains and escalating desperation from my family. Their attempts to secure last-minute invitations grew increasingly transparent and manipulative. My mother called daily, alternating between guilt trips. "This might be your father's last Christmas, his blood pressure, you know," and thinly veiled criticism. "I hope you're not going overboard with this house." Financial advisors always warn about emotional investments. When these tactics failed, she enlisted reinforcements. Extended family members suddenly reached out, casually mentioning how sad my parents seemed about our Christmas separation. "Your mother cried at book club," reported my Aunt Carol, my mother's loyal lieutenant. "She just doesn't understand why you're being so exclusive with your invitations." The irony of being accused of exclusivity by the architects of my 8-year exile was almost amusing. Ryan tried a different approach, sending an expensive gift basket to my Seattle office with a note reading, "To new beginnings and family reunions. Love, Ryan, Megan, and kids." The gift, arriving after years of minimal birthday acknowledgments and token Christmas presents, felt less like generosity and more like a transaction expense of olive oil in exchange for a mountain house invitation. Stephanie's strategy proved most surprising. She called one evening, her voice lacking its usual polish. "I think I understand what you're doing," she said quietly. "With the house, the Christmas plan." "Do you?" I asked, skeptical. "You felt left out. I get it. Sometimes family dynamics get complicated." For a moment, I thought she might actually acknowledge their behavior. Instead, she pivoted to backhanded compliments. "It's impressive how you've channeled your intensity into success. Not everyone understands your approach to life, but I've always admired your determination." Her words carried the familiar pattern, seeming praise that actually reinforced my role as the family outsider, the one who needed to be different rather than accepted for who I was. "Thank you for reaching out, Stephanie," I said, ending the call before she could circle back to Christmas invitations. The most unexpected contact came from my father, who rarely called me directly. His message, left while I was in a meeting, carried an unusual emotional weight. "Audrey, it's Dad. Look, I know things haven't been great between you and the family, especially around Christmas. I just want you to know I see what happened. I didn't stand up when I should have. If you're willing to talk, I'd appreciate it." I returned his call that evening, braced for another manipulation. Instead, I found him alone in his workshop, speaking with rare candor. "Your mother had this idea years ago that you needed to be taught a lesson about family priorities," he admitted. "Just for one Christmas. But then it became a pattern, and everyone adjusted to the new normal, including me. You never said anything," I noted, keeping my voice neutral despite the pain his confirmation triggered. "I convinced myself it wasn't that bad, that you had your Seattle life and didn't really mind." He paused. I was wrong. I know that now. Why the sudden realization? Nothing sudden about it. I've known for years, but took the easy route. Seeing this house, though, understanding what you've built by yourself, made me realize how much we've lost by pushing you away. His honesty was both validating and infuriating. After years of gaslighting, having someone confirm my experience brought relief. Yet his passive participation in my exclusion remained a betrayal. I appreciate your honesty, I said finally, but it comes very late. I know. I'm not asking for an invitation, he clarified. Just wanted you to hear that someone recognizes what happened. After we hung up, I sat in my Seattle apartment considering the family dynamics at play. My father's acknowledgement, while meaningful, didn't erase 8 years of deliberate exclusion or the family's coordinated efforts to rewrite that history. The week before Christmas, I flew to Colorado to prepare the mountain house. Mason helped string lights along the exterior while I arranged interior decorations, the 12-foot tree and the great room window garlands along the staircase, candles and hurricane lanterns on the mantel. It's coming together beautifully, Mason observed as we stood back to assess the tree. It feels right, I agreed, surprised by how peaceful I felt. The doorbell interrupted our conversation. Opening the door, I found Stephanie standing on my porch snow, dusting her hair, eyes red from crying. I drove up from Denver, she explained unnecessarily. I needed to see you. Stunned by her unexpected appearance, I invited her inside. Her eyes widened as she took in the house, the soaring ceilings, the panoramic views, the elegant Christmas decorations. This is incredible, she managed. Mason discreetly excused himself, promising to return the next day to help with final preparations. Once alone with my sister, I waited for her purpose to emerge. She wandered the main floor, examining details, occasionally commenting on a design element. Finally, she stopped at the photo wall along the staircase, noting the conspicuous gaps where family photos would typically hang. You left spaces, she observed. I did. Her composure cracked. Audrey, I need to tell you something. Something I'm not proud of. What followed was a confession 8 years in the making. Stephanie admitted orchestrating my initial exclusion from Christmas, convincing our mother I needed to learn my place in the family hierarchy after moving away and succeeding independently. I was jealous, she acknowledged, tears streaming down her face. You escaped. Built a life on your terms while I followed the path laid out for me. Every time you visited with new accomplishments, new stories, new freedom, it highlighted everything I gave up. Her resentment had calcified into an annual tradition of exclusion with our mother as a willing enforcer, and the rest of the family as passive participants. The worst part, she continued, is how easy it became to justify. We told ourselves you were too busy, too important for family traditions. We convinced each other you didn't really care. I cared, I said quietly. Every year I waited for an invitation that never came. I know. I've known all along. She wiped her eyes. Seeing this house, what you've built without us, made me realize how small we've become. How petty. Her remorse seemed genuine, but years of manipulation had taught me caution. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm tired of living in a family built on lies, she answered. Because my children ask about their Aunt Audrey and deserve better than the story we've been telling. Because I want to be the person who admits when she's wrong. We talked for hours as night fell across the mountains and snow continued to accumulate outside. Stephanie shared details. I hadn't known how my mother had initially resisted excluding me, but eventually embraced the narrative that I had chosen career over family. How Ryan had once argued for my inclusion but backed down when Megan threatened to take the children to her parents instead. How even extended family had eventually accepted the fiction that I had withdrawn from family traditions by choice. As our conversation concluded, Stephanie asked the inevitable question, "Is there any chance I could be included in your Christmas celebration?" Not the whole family, I understand that's too much to ask, but just me. The request presented a crucial decision point. Part of me wanted to refuse to let her experience the exclusion I had felt for years. Another part recognized the courage her confession required, and the possibility it represented not of erasing the past, but of creating a different future. I need to think about it, I told her honestly. This isn't just about you and me. Stephanie nodded, gathering her coat. I understand. Whatever you decide, I needed you to know the truth. After she left, I stood at the window watching her headlights disappear down the mountain road. The confrontation I had both dreaded and longed for had finally occurred, leaving me with a decision that would shape not just this Christmas but all the holidays to follow. December 23rd transformed the mountain house into everything I had envisioned. Fresh pine garlands draped the staircase, cinnamon and clove scented the air, and snow fell gently beyond the windows. Professional caterers prepared the kitchen for Christmas Eve dinner while I arranged final touches, hand-calligraphed place cards, vintage ornaments, and cedar wreaths on bedroom doors. Mason arrived mid-morning with additional firewood and homemade eggnog. The mountain looks perfect for your gathering, he noted, helping me arrange the final decorations. Roads are clear despite the snow. The first guests arrived that afternoon, my Seattle friends, Emma and Daniel, followed by former colleagues from my early career days. Their genuine delight in the mountain house and the reunion warmed the space before the fire was even lit. "This is magnificent, Audrey," Emma exclaimed, exploring the great room. "You've created something truly special here." Aunt Beatrice arrived next, her appearance triggering unexpected emotion. As the only family member who had consistently acknowledged the truth of my exclusion, her presence carried particular significance. "My dear girl," she embraced me tightly. "You've built your own tradition." I couldn't be prouder. In the privacy of the kitchen, she shared family updates. "Your mother's beside herself that her plan backfired so spectacularly. She genuinely believed you'd eventually beg to be included on her terms. And my father, quieter than usual. I think his conversation with you affected him deeply." "What about Ryan and Megan?" "Conflicted. Ryan seems genuinely remorseful, but Megan's furious at being excluded from, and I quote, the fancy mountain Christmas." Aunt Beatrice smiled wryly. The irony appears lost on her. By evening, most guests had arrived. The house filled with conversation and laughter as people explored the property and claimed bedrooms. Standing in the great room, watching these connections form, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This gathering represented exactly what I had hoped to create: a genuine celebration with people who valued authentic connection. Just before dinner, an unexpected knock interrupted the festivities. Opening the door revealed Tyler, my college boyfriend, whose relationship with me had been sabotaged by Stephanie's interference. "Tyler," I stammered, genuinely shocked. "What are you doing here?" "Your aunt invited me," he explained, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. "Said something about setting the record straight. Is it okay that I came?" Aunt Beatrice appeared beside me. "I hope you don't mind, Audrey. After learning what really happened between you two, I thought Tyler deserved to know the truth. And perhaps you both deserved a second chance at friendship, if nothing else." Tyler had married several years after our breakup and was now divorced. Learning that our relationship's end had been engineered rather than inevitable had prompted him to accept Aunt Beatrice's invitation. "We don't have to rehash ancient history," he assured me. "But I'd like to be part of your celebration if you're comfortable with that." His presence added an unexpected dimension to the gathering, a tangible reminder of how family interference had shaped my life in ways I was only beginning to fully understand. As Christmas Eve dinner commenced, 22 guests filled the dining table and kitchen island. The conversation flowed as easily as the wine-old connections strengthening and new ones forming. Watching this diverse group find common ground in my home felt like the culmination of everything the mountain house represented: not rejection of the past, but creation of something new and authentic. After dinner, as guests gathered around the fire for dessert, my phone began vibrating with texts. First from my mother, then Ryan, then multiple extended family members, all suddenly concerned about my well-being in the mountain snow, all coincidentally thinking of me simultaneously on Christmas Eve. "Your family's realizing what they're missing," Aunt Beatrice observed, glancing at my illuminated phone. "Too little, too late," I replied, silencing the notifications. As midnight approached, another knock at the door interrupted the festivities. Opening it revealed Stephanie standing in the snow, looking simultaneously determined and uncertain. "I know you said you needed time to think," she began, "but it's Christmas Eve, and I couldn't stay away. I understand if you ask me to leave." The moment crystallized the choice before me. I could refuse her entry, giving her a taste of the exclusion I had experienced repeatedly. Or I could demonstrate the generosity that had been withheld from me for 8 years. Behind me, the gathering continued laughter and conversation, filling the house I had created specifically to counter my family's rejection. This moment would define not just this Christmas, but potentially all future family relationships. "Stephanie," I said finally, "this isn't about getting even. It's about creating something genuine." "I understand," she said, quietly preparing to return to her car. "Which is why I continued. I need to know your presence here would be authentic. Not a performance for others, not a way to avoid guilt, but a genuine desire to rebuild what's been broken." "It is," she insisted, meeting my eyes directly. "I've spent years letting resentment guide my actions. I don't want to be that person anymore." The sincerity in her expression made my decision. "Then come in. There's room at the table." Stephanie's integration into the gathering wasn't seamless. Initial awkwardness gave way to cautious conversation as she navigated a social setting where she wasn't automatically centered as the family favorite. Yet watching her genuine efforts to connect with my friends, asking questions, listening attentively, acknowledging her limited perspective suggested possibility, where I had seen only permanent fracture. Late that night, after most guests had retired to their rooms, Stephanie and I stood at the great room windows watching snow illuminate under moonlight. "This isn't forgiveness yet," I told her honestly, "but it might be the beginning of something new." "That's more than I deserve," she acknowledged, "and more than I expected." As Christmas Eve ended, my phone displayed missed calls from my parents and Ryan. Whether to extend this tentative reconciliation beyond Stephanie remained a question for Christmas Day, and perhaps beyond. Christmas morning dawned with pink light illuminating snow-covered peaks and fresh powder blanketing the property. I woke early, enjoying quiet moments on the deck with coffee before the house stirred to life. The night's snowfall had transformed the landscape into something magical, pristine, untouched, full of possibility. Mason joined me, bringing fresh cinnamon rolls from his kitchen. "Merry Christmas, Audrey." "Merry Christmas," I replied, feeling the phrase's sincerity for the first time in years. Guests emerged, gradually exclaiming over the snow-covered view before gathering in the great room for breakfast. Stephanie appeared last, uncertainty visible beneath her careful composure. The previous night's inclusion had been a beginning, not a resolution. After breakfast, my phone rang, my father calling for the third time since dawn. After 8 years of exclusion, my family's sudden urgency carried its own irony. Stepping onto the deck for privacy, I finally answered. "Merry Christmas, Dad." Audrey relief flooded his voice. "Your mother and I have been worried. The roads must be dangerous with the snow." "The roads are fine," I assured him. "The house is fine. Everything is fine." A pause followed. "Stephanie didn't come home last night. She told your mother she was driving up to see you." "She's here," I confirmed. "She arrived last evening." Another pause, longer this time. "Audrey, I need to say something important. Something I should have said years ago." His voice wavered. "What we did, excluding you year after year, was wrong. Not just unkind, but fundamentally wrong. I knew it and did nothing. That failure is entirely mine." The acknowledgement I had craved for 8 years, delivered on Christmas morning, brought unexpected emotion. "Why now, Dad? After all this time?" "Because I saw what it cost us. What it cost you." He hesitated. "And because at 60 I finally realized that keeping peace at the expense of truth isn't peace at all." We talked for several minutes, his apology neither erasing the past nor immediately healing the present, but offering something previously absent: accountability. "Your mother wants to speak with you," he said finally. I braced myself for justification or deflection. Instead, my mother's voice carried unfamiliar humility. I orchestrated this, Audrey. The exclusions, the stories, all of it. I thought I was teaching you a lesson about family obligation. Instead, I revealed something ugly in myself. Her admission, while significant, felt incomplete. Why, Mom? What was so threatening about my independence? Because you didn't need me, she answered with surprising candor. Stephanie and Ryan built lives that keep me central. Their decisions, their children, their daily existence all revolve around my approval. You built something entirely your own. It felt like rejection. So you rejected me first, I observed. Preemptively. Yes, she acknowledged. I'm not proud of that. The conversation continued, years of unspoken truths finally finding voice. My mother's controlling nature had interpreted my independence as criticism of her life choices. My success beyond the family sphere threatened her carefully constructed hierarchy. My refusal to participate in family politics undermined systems she had spent decades perfecting. Understanding her motivations didn't excuse the behavior, but it provided context previously missing from our relationship. As we prepared to end the call, she asked the inevitable question, "Is there any possibility we could see you today, just briefly?" The request presented the culmination of my Christmas journey from excluded daughter to powerful decision-maker. After years of seeking invitations that never came, I now controlled access to the celebration I had created. Not today, Mom, I decided. Today belongs to the gathering already planned. But perhaps tomorrow if you and Dad would like to drive up. Just us, she clarified. Not Ryan and Megan. Just you and Dad, I confirmed. Some relationships need different timelines for healing. After ending the call, I returned to the Christmas celebration unfolding throughout the house. Gift exchanges, board games, and impromptu singing filled the morning. By afternoon, some guests ventured outside for sledding on the gentle slope behind the house while others prepared for dinner. Watching from the kitchen window, I found myself standing beside Aunt Beatrice. "You've created something beautiful here," she observed. "Not just the house, but what's happening inside it." "It feels right," I agreed. "Different from what I imagined, but right." "The best things usually are," she smiled. Speaking of different, Mason seems quite attentive today. His attention hadn't escaped my notice. Throughout the day, Mason had moved seamlessly between guest and co-host, anticipating needs, sharing mountain stories, and repeatedly finding reasons to be wherever I happened to be. "He's been a good neighbor," I acknowledged, feeling warmth rise in my cheeks. "Neighbors don't look at each other the way he looks at you," Aunt Beatrice noted before tactfully changing the subject. Christmas dinner unfolded with all the magic I had envisioned when planning the gathering months earlier. The dining table gleamed with silver and crystal, the food was exceptional, and conversation flowed freely between people who had been strangers just days before. Stephanie, initially reserved, gradually found her place within the gathering. Watching her laugh genuinely at Emma's stories, I glimpsed the sister I had missed, not the perfect daughter performing for our mother's approval, but the authentic person beneath those roles. After dinner, Tyler helped me serve coffee in the great room. "This is extraordinary, Audrey. Not just the house, but what you've created here, this gathering of people who truly see you." "It's different from what I planned," I admitted. This was supposed to be my declaration of independence from family rejection. Instead, it's become something more nuanced. "The best revenge isn't getting even," he observed. "It's living well on your own terms." As Christmas night concluded, guests gradually retired to bedrooms or departed for nearby accommodations. Mason lingered, helping clear the last glasses. "Thank you," I told him when we finally stood alone in the kitchen. "Not just for today, but for everything since I bought this place. Your support has meant more than you know. The mountain brought you here for a reason," he said simply. "I'm just glad I was around to witness it." Something in his expression, warmth, admiration, possibility, sparked a connection that transcended neighborly friendship. When he leaned forward to kiss me, it felt like another Christmas gift, unexpected yet perfectly timed. The following morning, my parents arrived as arranged. Their entry into the house I had created without them carried symbolic weight for us all. Their expressions registered surprise, admiration, and perhaps regret at the magnitude of what they had excluded themselves from. Our conversation was tentative at first, years of established patterns challenging to disrupt. Yet genuine effort emerged on both sides. Their accountability, my willingness to consider a new chapter without erasing the past. This doesn't fix everything, I told them, as they prepared to leave. 8 years of exclusion doesn't heal in a single visit. We understand, my father assured me. We're grateful for the opportunity to begin. As they departed, Stephanie joined me at the door. I'm driving back with them, she explained. Ryan called this morning. He and Megan want to meet for coffee tomorrow. Are you going to tell them about being here? Everything, she nodded. It's time for honesty, however uncomfortable. The remainder of the holiday week brought natural conclusions to the Christmas gathering. Guests departed with promises to return, the caterers completed. Final cleanups and decorations were carefully packed away. Through it all, Mason remained a steady presence, our newfound connection deepening with each conversation. 1 year later, the Mountain House hosted another Christmas gathering, some guests returning, others joining for the first time. My relationship with Mason had evolved from neighborly friendship to committed partnership. My family relationships had progressed at varying paces, strongest with Stephanie, gradually improving with my parents, still tentative with Ryan and Megan. Standing on the deck, watching guests arrive, I reflected on the journey that had led to this moment. The Mountain House had begun as my response to family rejection, a grand statement of independence born from hurt. It had evolved into something far more meaningful, the physical manifestation of authenticity, the setting for new traditions and genuine connections. I hadn't bought this Mountain House for revenge, though that's how it started. I bought it to rise above, literally and figuratively. Some family ties were severed, others strengthened, but most importantly, I finally found my place. Not the place they'd assigned me, but the one I chose for myself. Have you ever had to create your own space after feeling excluded? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and self-discovery. Thank you for joining me today, and remember, sometimes the family we create matters more than the one we're born into. Wishing you a holiday season filled with authentic connections and the courage to build your own traditions when necessary.